for tuning in and checking out User Update. This is the User Update review of the Huawei Mate 10 in 2021. The Huawei Mate 10 is the best phone that you could buy for 100 euros. It's odd to admit this, but the Huawei Mate 10 is the best budget phone you could buy right now. It's odd because the phone is so old that perhaps it is better to recommend more current alternatives. However, after using the Huawei Mate 10 for a 2-month review period, it is easy to say that this is the best phone that could be bought for 100 euros. Off the bat, the warning is, this phone is not for everybody. This phone can mostly be purchased used or refurbished these days. However, still, the phone is indeed an amazing phone though. The Mate 10 has everything that is wanted in a phone and can easily be useful for the next 12 months. It might be kind of weird to see that this review is being written now in the first quarter of 2021. The Huawei Mate 10 was released in October 2017, the last quarter of 2017, and it became widely available worldwide in the first quarter of 2018. The Mate 10 is old, in fact, 3 years old, to put an exact date on it. It is also stuck on Android 10 and EMUI 10 with a security patch from July 1st, 2020. Its July 2020 security patch came with the Huawei EMUI stability update pushed on September 24th, 2020. So even the security update arrived on an untimely schedule. There are no indicators that this phone will be getting any more major updates, perhaps until forever and the end of time. Rumor has it that this phone may never see an update to EMUI 11. So the Mate 10 is old, and it is also on old software with an 8-month-old security patch. To be 100% clear, there is absolutely nothing new about the Mate 10, and the old software and security patch might already be a deal breaker. Despite the outmoded software, this phone still has some redeeming qualities which make it worthwhile. Despite its age, the Huawei Mate 10 is still worth it in 2021. This can be asserted confidently considering other phones released in late 2017 like the iPhone 10 or the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 or the LG V30 are still worthwhile as affordable options purchasable on the used market. All 2017 flagships will still run great. They will run apps, take photos, record videos, and play games perfectly fine. The advantage here goes to the iPhone 10, which should see updates for several years beyond 2021. The iPhone 10 is a great phone, and it still gets updates and will continue to get updates for at least 2 more years. The Mate 10 still bests its aforementioned Android rivals. The Note 8 and the LG are somewhat disadvantaged compared to the Mate 10 because they are stuck on a full Android version behind on Android 9 Pie. Aside from the iPhone, the Mate 10 is indeed the best 2017 flagship phone on the used market right now. It's on Android 10, it's cheaper than the Note 8 and the V30, and it is unique. Really, there is nothing like it. Nothing even close to it. And here's why. Firstly, the screen. The Mate 10 is awesome because it stands out as the last true flagship phone with a large-sized 16:9 aspect ratio display. The display is larger than that of the 5.5-inch display found on the bezel monster of a phone, the iPhone 8 Plus, which is also another great phone that will still get software updates for another 2 years or so, but still, the Mate 10 has a larger screen and its body is still quite smaller than that of the plus-sized iPhone. Why is this special? The 16:9 aspect ratio display is an extinct breed. No joke, the iPhone SE was the only mainstream major release phone with a 16:9 aspect ratio display released within the last 12 months. And there was exactly 0 phones that were released between 2019 and 2020 with a 16:9 aspect ratio display. While there was still yet another phone that came out after the Mate 10 with a large 6-inch 16:9 aspect ratio display, namely the Sony Xperia XA2 Ultra, released in the first quarter of 2018, the Mate 10 gets a rare distinction of being the last truly flagship class feature-packed phone with a large 16:9 aspect ratio display. The Xperia XA2 Ultra might beat the Huawei in terms of sheer display size, albeit only by fractions of an inch. Its display resolution is much lower, the chipset inside is much weaker, and it is a far less capable device, and worse in just about every possible aspect. Overall size, bezels, build material, speakers, on and on. Anyone accustomed to 16:9 aspect ratio displays, let's say anyone who owned an iPhone 7 Plus or an 8 Plus, or on the Android side of things, an Xperia XA2 Ultra or a Google Nexus P by Huawei, will likely appreciate screens with this aspect ratio. Anyone who is not used to using a 16:9 display, or anyone who has been using phones of all sorts of ratios, from the 19.5:9 used on most new iPhones, or the 18:9 that was all the craze in the single year of 2017, will still appreciate that 16:9 is perhaps the best aspect ratio. After using taller, skinnier, wide aspect ratio phones, 16:9 still comes out on top. A good theory for why this is the case can be that it comes down to surface area. Surface area is an interesting thing to analyze because with taller, skinnier phones, only their diagonal measures are longer. However, overall, they are smaller screens. For example, the Huawei Mate 10 has a 5.93-inch 16:9 aspect ratio screen, and the iPhone XR has a 6.1-inch 19.5:9 aspect ratio screen. While the iPhone XR seems like it has a bigger screen because it has a diagonal measure that is longer, it actually has the smaller screen by surface area. The surface area of the iPhone XR is 90.3 centimeters square versus the Mate 10 that has 95.6 centimeters square. Almost anyone would appreciate a bigger overall display above a skinnier, wider display any day of the week. And for this reasoning, the Mate 10 is perfect. Whilst on the subject of the front of the phone, there's the topic of bezels. Now, in terms of bezel design, the Mate 10's bezel design is very similar to that of the Samsung Galaxy Note 9, with virtually no side bezels and just thin slivers of bezels on the top and bottom of the screen. The Mate 10 has the perfect balance of minimal bezels. No, seriously, its screen to body ratio is higher than that of the iPhone XR. The intention here is not to put down the iPhone XR with all these comparisons. The XR itself is a really great phone and will likely get updates for another 2-3 years, but rather the point of these comparisons is to compare the Mate 10 to the XR in order to highlight a bigger picture perspective. The perspective is that this underrated Mate 10 phone from 2017 is still having many standout competitive features. Consider that these bezels beautifully wrap around a QHD 2K 1400 by 40p super bright 670 nits HDR10 goodness screen. For an LCD, this screen is out of this world phenomenal. All in all, this is a very well designed phone all around. Also similar to the iPhone 8 Plus, the Huawei Mate 10 stands out as the last true flagship with a capacitive fingerprint reader home button on the front of the phone. After spending years using the iPhone 7 Plus, the iPhone 8, and now the Mate 10, it is settled. The fingerprint reader belongs on the front of the phone. And in the case of the Mate 10, to add some extra pizzazz, the fingerprint reader on the Mate 10 is also used for gesture navigation. While talking about gesture doesn't sound that epic at all, it is one of those things that has to be tried out in real life in order to understand it and appreciate its wow factor. Getting used to navigating the phone with the fingerprint reader, it becomes extremely obvious that more phones should have implemented this navigation method. It's sleek, it keeps the screen free of virtual navigation buttons, and is much better than swipe gestures from the edge of the screen on Android and iOS, specifically because it makes managing this big phone doable in one hand. To quickly sum up this review of the phone, let's talk about the body. It's immaculate and stunning in design, hardy and solid. It feels premium and well built. It's like the same radius corners that give it a note-like squared off kind of design. Also, it can withstand splashes, like washing dishes or trying to watch Netflix in the shower, thanks to a splash-resistant design. There is a warning: do not submerge or dunk this phone in water. It is not designed to resist that much water. Consider it a downside if you want to. This phone doesn't have the highest water resistance rating, but still, don't go swimming with your phone. IP53 is perfect for how anyone should use their phone. The screen, perhaps the best screen, mostly due to its brightness and sharpness from an ultra-high resolution. It's very similar to an iPhone X display. Although it's not exactly an OLED, it still has a lot of contrast and punchiness, deep blacks. The blacks on the Mate 10 are in fact so deep, it could be mistaken for an OLED. Chipset. It's fast, at least fast enough. When playing PUBG, everything is running smoothly. Time to time, maybe, you notice an odd stutter when browsing the internet or scrolling through menus. It's random, but overall, this phone is getting the job done. The performance feels something like an iPhone 8. Performance in benchmarks. Really, this is a very capable phone, even by current contemporary 2021 standards. Consider that for the price you pay, let's say as low as 75 euros, or maybe 135 euros on the higher end of things, when you're shopping on eBay, of course, or let's say simply 100 euros, which is equivalent to 120 US dollars, this phone is scoring 250,000 on Antutu and 380 single-core, 1600 multi-core on Geekbench 5. That puts this phone neck and neck with similar performers like the Snapdragon 730G powered phones. Think of something like the Motorola One Fusion Plus, or the Realme X2, or the Poco X2, or Redmi K30, or maybe the Pixel 4a. We can liken the performance to the Poco X3 or even the Poco M2 Pro. All of these are new 2020 entry-level or middle-class phones that can be purchased for 250 to 350 euros. Essentially, the Mate 10 is neck and neck with current value for money smartphones. Memory and storage. With 4GB of RAM and 64GB of storage, the Mate 10 will be fine for an everyday Android user. These days, 464 is the bare minimum for a good experience. Luckily, the Mate 10 also has an SD card slot. Operating system, EMUI 10.0.0.180 on Android 10 is admittedly a little outdated, and it would likely not get any future updates. Android 10 is not bad though. Camera. This thing is fantastic at shooting stills. Background blur looks phenomenal. Fall off looks as though it was from a DSLR. The camera also has OIS. Its only weakness is how it processes grass in landscape images. It has a tendency to lose detail in the individual blades of grass. Although this is hit or miss. Sometimes it will take sharp grass. Just a lot of the times it doesn't. It's hit or miss. Battery. Battery lasts a day or so when brightness is kept lowered and under control. Auto brightness tends to want to make the screen super bright all the time. Battery tends to drain quite quickly when the brightness is high. So actively wrestling with the auto brightness or turning it off completely is recommended. Although the highest peak brightness is only achievable when auto brightness is turned on, because the phone will go into a high contrast boosted mode if it detects that there is bright direct sunlight. That said, running the phone on the maximum highest resolution at all times instead of the default adaptive smart resolution mode surely has a tax on the battery. But for the high quality crispy visuals, it's worth it. During the review period, light use can have the battery last for 24 hours mixed use. Typical use can have anywhere in between 4 and 7 hours of screen on time. Heavy use, such as gaming, and you are looking at maximum 5 hours screen on time, but maybe closer to 4.5. It should be pointed out that this is a 2017 phone, so battery life will not be like what it was like back in 2017. Still, even after years of degradation, the battery life is still good. Standby time is awesome. The battery barely drains when it's lying around and the screen is off. On the plus side, it also supports fast charging, and the fast charging here, let's just say, it's super fast and super good. It's good to know it's there. If the battery life is good enough now, it must have been amazing when this phone initially came out. Under the stock settings, the UI wants to kill apps aggressively in order to maintain a longer battery life, but this gets really old really quickly. So here's some tips to keep apps running in the background. The suggestion is go to Settings, Battery, App Launch, or search for App Launch, and then turn off Manage Automatically, set to Manage Manually, and have all three boxes selected. Do this for all apps. This is annoying. It is honestly the most annoying part of owning a Huawei phone because it's time consuming. Then after that, go to Settings, Apps, 3-dot hamburger, Battery Optimization, or just search for Battery Optimization, then select Show All Apps, then set to Don't Allow, or whichever option that says this may cause battery to drain. It tends to have different phrasing on different devices, but it's all the same concept. In the end, the way Huawei attempts to manage apps to extend battery life might be the culprit that's causing poor RAM management on Huawei phones. After doing these steps, RAM management is much better. Make sure to turn all of Huawei's optimizations off to get the most stock-like experience. Admittedly, this is the worst part of owning a Huawei. Security. Front-facing fingerprint scanner and camera-based face unlock, both are super fast and satisfying. Connections. Speed Demon. This phone is super fast on Wi-Fi with 5 GHz. It has NFC for payments, 3.5mm headphone jack is amazing for everyday use. The phone features an equalizer and Huawei's Hissen sound enhancement. Wired headphones and wired audio is another feature that we see less and less on flagships these days. And this phone also has an IR blaster, something that should be considered fundamental and a must-have feature that should be on all phones. It's great to use it to control the TV. Audio. Speakers on this phone are loud and clear, and the headphone jack quality is awesome. Price. On eBay, the phone can be found for anything between €75 and €125, or $115 and $145, so the price on eBay is a great deal. They could also be found on AliExpress or DHgate for $185 to $225 US. Also, check local classifieds. You should be able to find used models selling for less than €175 regularly. In many ways, the price is also a feature of this phone because you're getting a lot of phone for very little money. Honestly, there's not much unlikable about this phone. Maybe the update situation and the end of software support is a letdown, but that is something that can be lived with. This is kind of happening to many Android phones. Plain and simply, Androids don't get updates for as long as iPhones do. So it is something that can't be held against Android phones. Just accept it. In the future, hopefully Androids will get as much support as iPhones get, but then again, the lack of upgrading to Android 11 or 12 won't ruin the experience of an Android phone. Negatives. The few things not to like. Audio. While the phone does have good audio overall, the phone has quote-unquote stereo speakers, but it doesn't sound stereo at all. The sound coming out of the earpiece is so quiet compared to the bottom speaker, it doesn't create a stereo effect at all. It's kind of more like a supporting speaker, a little bit like a backup speaker. I guess it's overall nice to have, but it's not really stereo. It's like, I guess, a 10 to 90 kind of balance. Though it is possible to get more of a stereo balance and get that stereo slightly better by turning off the Stereo Plus feature in settings. The last and final gripe about this phone is that it does get a little warm while gaming. But surprisingly, it doesn't throttle. No matter how hot it gets, it never throttles. The performance stays very stable while it's getting warm. So that's it for the user update review of the Huawei Mate 10 in 2021. It's a 2017 phone that is still very, very good in 2021. And for the price that you could find it on the used or refurbished market, it's definitely a recommendation. The Huawei Mate 10 is the best phone you can buy for €100 right now.